Del Taco and Taco Bell are the most popular Mexican-inspired fast food chains in the United States. Now, Chipotle is bigger than Del Taco, but they are categorized as more of a fast casual restaurant known for selling burritos, and I think almost anyone would agree that these two are way more comparable to each other. Each of these restaurants is known for having low-priced menu items, specifically tacos. They have those little packets of taco sauce, and I mean, the word taco is in both of their names. They both started in Southern California within 2 years of each other back in the 1960s, and ever since, there's been an ongoing rivalry between them. I want to mention up front that I have already made a video talking about the success of Taco Bell, so for this video, I want to focus a little more on the Del Taco end of things while comparing the chains in 5 separate categories that I feel are significant in detailing this rivalry. The first of these categories being size, because even though this very much has been a rivalry, it has not been a close one. Honestly, it is kind of embarrassing for Del Taco because I do not think there's been a single moment in the past 60 plus years where they have been the one that is doing better, and that is not from lack of effort. In 1992, Kevin Moriarty, the president of Del Taco at the time, said that they were planning for a national expansion and that they wanted to have as many as 1,750 restaurants open by the year 2000. I mean, considering they only had 289 operating at the time, that would have been a massive leap, growing 6 times larger within an 8-year span. Not only did they fail to execute this plan, but in fact, the following year, they filed for bankruptcy. Del Taco had a lot of debt stemming from a leveraged buyout a few years earlier, and a Los Angeles Times article about that bankruptcy reported the privately held company said it remains profitable, but the debt load has limited its ability to expand and keep pace with the tremendous growth of its chief rival, Taco Bell. Trust me when I say that the debt load was not the only reason Del Taco was failing to keep up with Taco Bell. They were way behind even before that buyout ever happened. But the way it was reported there really makes it seem like Del Taco went so far as to file for bankruptcy because they were planning to make a big push to catch up to them. Coming out of that bankruptcy, Moriarty said, "No longer are we merely positioning ourselves for growth. Today, we redirect our signals on real accelerated expansion through ambitious company and franchise growth across the country." That sounds like he was really hyped up about it. The new plan was to reach 1,000 locations by the year 2000. Still ambitious, but maybe a little more realistic. Well, by the year 2000, they had actually grown to only 372 restaurants. By 2015, Del Taco had grown to 550 restaurants when it was sold and then placed on the stock market. The new leader declared that he would make it a nationwide brand by adding 1,500 more locations. Well, yet again, that was overly ambitious. In 2022, Del Taco was bought by Jack in the Box, and at the time, CEO of Jack in the Box, Darren Harris, said, "We have ambitious growth plans for our combined company, and we are excited for the many exciting opportunities ahead." To this day, if you go to their franchising website, it says, "We are aggressively expanding across the United States," and they are in the process of entering new states like Indiana and South Carolina, but you can understand why people are skeptical about it. Right now, Del Taco has around 600 locations throughout 15 states. Compare that to Taco Bell, who has over 7,000 locations found in every US state. Not only does Taco Bell have 12 times the locations, on average, each of these locations is selling more food, meaning system-wide sales for Taco Bell in the US are about 15 times higher than Del Taco. So, on strictly a size comparison, Del Taco has been repeatedly falling short. Another category of comparison, I promise makes a lot more sense than it may sound like at first: burgers. In 1951, Glenn Bell was inspired by McDonald's to start his own hamburger stand. At the time, tacos were very new to the US market, so they were a big hit when he started selling them. Over the next decade, he started a few different taco concepts like Taco Tia and El Taco, ultimately sticking with Taco Bell in 1962. One of the 5 original items at Taco Taco Bell was the chili burger, which was essentially a taco with a bun instead of a shell. Most of the US population was still far more familiar with burgers still, so it was a safe bet to provide it as an option and maybe even have it as like a gateway food to help people transition over to tacos for their future visits. In the 1970s, the name of it was changed to the Bell Burger, then to the Bell Beefer, before ultimately being discontinued. In the early 2000s, Taco Bell introduced one of their most successful slogans, "Think outside the bun," a clever way of differentiating themselves from most other fast food restaurants. So even though hamburgers inspired Glenn Bell to get started and were an important menu item in the beginning, they are no longer sold at Taco Bell, and that slogan helps ensure that people know it. Del Taco was started in 1964 with clear inspiration from Taco Bell. Co-founder Ed Hackbarth lived in the same area in Southern California and had even worked for Glenn Bell at one of his older taco restaurants before teaming up with David Jameson to start their own taco restaurant that also offered burgers as one of its original menu items. However, Del Taco never phased it out. Today, you could still buy hamburgers there. I would say that is the most glaring difference between the two menus. And I also want to point out, related to this, that their new owner, Jack in the Box, is primarily a hamburger chain, though they are one of the few that also sells tacos. So even though Del Taco and Taco Bell focus so heavily on tacos, burgers have been important to their foundation and represent one of the biggest differences between them. My next comparison is going to be the ownership of the brands. For Taco Bell, the biggest change occurred in 1978 when Glenn Bell sold it to Pepsi. Pepsi wanted to ensure that their soda was being sold in restaurants over Coca-Cola or any other brand, so they started buying a bunch of restaurant chains. Just a few months earlier, they had bought Pizza Hut, and here they were buying Taco Bell, who already had over 800 locations, by the way, meaning they were already bigger than Del Taco is now, almost 5 decades later. But then, having such a large company behind it really took Taco Bell to that next level. They quickly became a national brand by opening thousands of restaurants all across the country. Troubling news for Del Taco, but what made it even more complicated was that they had just sold the rights to open new restaurants outside of California to a chemical company who went on to open a few dozen of them, mostly in Texas and Georgia. So here, the original Del Taco company was legally unable to even try to answer back to Taco Bell's big expansion, and it remained that way for the next 15 years. In 1992, the Del Taco company did buy back those rights, but the Del Taco restaurants that were already opened outside of California were sold to Taco Bell, who naturally converted them into Taco Bells. So just looking at things like this, it is really becoming clear how Taco Bell has pulled so far ahead. Probably the biggest single move in Del Taco's history would be teaming up with Noggles. See, Dick Noggle originally installed kitchen equipment at one of the first Del Taco locations. He ended up becoming a partner of the company for a few years before leaving to start his own third competing taco chain that was named after himself. In 1988, Del Taco and Noggles were brought together when they were separately acquired by the same person, who then converted most of the Noggles restaurants into Del Tacos. And you're not going to believe this, but the plan there was to combine the smaller chains into something that could better compete with Taco Bell. Those deals did make Del Taco considerably bigger, but did not do much to expand it geographically, and was responsible for most of that debt that led to the bankruptcy a few years later. Another comparison I want to make is the quality, along with the freshness of the food. Now, I realize a lot of this is subjective, and people are going to have their own preferences, but historically, Del Taco has been recognized for having fresher, higher quality ingredients. For that Taco Bell video I made, there are a lot of comments under it from people expressing how much they prefer Del Taco. It has developed a cult following, and seems like many of the people that have access to it actually prefer it over the more popular option. A lot of the freshness comes from the fact that the people who work in the restaurants are typically doing comparatively more to prepare the food. For example, unlike Taco Bell, all of the vegetables are cut up at the location as opposed to arriving already sliced, and it is a similar situation when it comes to grilling the meat or grating the cheese. Even the colors in their logo are meant to represent the vibrant colors of the fresh ingredients that they use. A lot of their advertising over the years has emphasized quality and freshness, and that is going to lead me right into my final comparison: marketing. I would argue that Taco Bell has been one of the most successful brands of all time when it comes to marketing. marketing, going back to the simple fact that Glen Bell had such a perfect name to attach to a restaurant like this. To this day, the bell is at the center of their brand, but beyond that, the constant introduction of new menu items, many of which have become iconic at this point. You know what I'm talking about, the Crunchwrap Supremes, Cinnamon Twists, Doritos Locos Tacos, Baja Blast started out as a Taco Bell exclusive. Meanwhile, Del Taco has been much more straightforward with their menu and the branding of it. And looking at their ad campaigns, again, Taco Bell has so much more memorable stuff. They have had higher budgets for it, and I think it shows. The thing I still associate with them is that Spanish-speaking Chihuahua from the 1990s, who always seemed to want some Taco Bell. I just do not know if I can say the same for Del Taco. For anyone who has Del Tacos in their area, I'm curious to hear about any of their campaigns that might stand out to you in a similar way. In fact, they have had some issues in that area. Notably, in 1999, they introduced a character that really seemed to resemble Zorro, so much so that they were sued over it. They agreed to make changes as part of a settlement, but just ended up abandoning the character, and then the following year, they aired a set of radio ads with a character called Shaq Johnson, which caused NBA player Shaquille O'Neal to sue them, claiming that the commercials implied that he was endorsing it. When of course, he wasn't, because Shaquille O'Neal has a history of endorsing Taco Bell instead. Notably, in 1995, when he rode a tandem bicycle with Hakeem Olajuwon to advertise their new double-decker taco, and a few years later, when he developed taco neck syndrome from bending his neck to eat so many tacos, though that did make him better at free throws, evidently. Overall, when comparing these two chains, despite many people preferring the food at Del Taco, you cannot deny that Taco Bell has been way more successful. They started out earlier, have been more aggressive, have had more powerful and consistent ownership, and have had more effective marketing. I think this is a great example of how two comparable businesses could have such different trajectories given the people that are running those businesses. Let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts about Del Taco compared to Taco Bell? For anyone who has sampled both of them, what stands out as the biggest similarities and differences? And for anyone who has yet to try Del Taco, are you interested? According to the company, it could be opening near you sometime soon, but you might not want to get too excited there, just not yet anyway. Finally, are there any other categories of comparison that you feel would be significant here, and any other thoughts you have about Del Taco or Taco Bell, leave them in the comments. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Thank you for watching.